Why do some container strawberry plants produce only a few berries, while others become so full of fruit that the leaves nearly disappear? You may have seen it yourself. Two strawberry plants can start the season looking almost identical. A few weeks later, one is covered in flowers and developing berries, while the other seems stuck producing leaves. By the end of the season, the difference can be remarkable. Many gardeners assume the answer must be expensive fertilizer, special soil, or a rare strawberry variety. Yet after watching container-grown strawberries over many seasons, a different pattern often appears. Some of the most productive plants are growing in fairly ordinary conditions. At the same time, some of the least productive plants look healthy and green but produce very little fruit. If this feels confusing, that's very common. The surprising part is that one of the biggest mistakes happens when gardeners are actually trying to help their strawberries grow. And later, we'll uncover a simple adjustment that can make a noticeable difference in how much fruit a container plant is capable of producing. Before explaining why this happened, it helps to understand how strawberry plants decide where their energy goes. When most people look at a strawberry plant, they naturally focus on what they can see. Bright green leaves often seem like a sign that everything is going well. And sometimes that is true. But strawberries have limited energy. Every day, the plant makes choices about where that energy should go. It can use energy to grow leaves, build roots, create flowers, develop berries, or send out runners. This is why a plant that appears strong and healthy is not always the plant that produces the most fruit. Think of leaves as the plant's solar panels. They collect sunlight and help produce energy. The leaves are important. However, if most of the plant's resources are going into leaf production, there may be less energy available for flowers and berries. Many gardeners become excited when they see lots of fresh green growth. Yet sometimes that beautiful growth is quietly telling a different story. The plant may be focusing on growing itself rather than producing fruit. Once you begin looking at strawberries this way, many other gardening mysteries start to make sense. One of the biggest factors affecting that energy balance is something many people overlook entirely. The container itself. Container size has a greater influence on strawberry harvests than many gardeners realize. A strawberry plant might fit comfortably into a small pot when it is first planted. But as the season progresses, the roots need room to expand. Roots are the foundation of everything happening above the soil. When roots become crowded, they have a harder time finding water and nutrients. Small containers also warm up faster during hot weather and dry out much more quickly. The effects are not always immediate. A plant may look perfectly fine for several weeks. Then flowering slows. Berries remain small. Growth becomes less vigorous. This delayed response often causes confusion because the problem started much earlier than the symptoms appeared. Larger containers usually create a more stable environment. Soil temperatures change more slowly. Moisture remains available longer. Roots have room to support stronger flowering and fruit development. That brings us to another area where many gardeners unintentionally create stress for their strawberries. Watering is often discussed in terms of frequency. People ask whether they should water every day, every other day, or once a week. But strawberries are not counting days. They respond to conditions. The more important question is whether moisture is reaching the root system consistently and deeply enough. When soil becomes extremely dry, the plant experiences stress. It may reduce flower production or struggle to support developing berries. At the same time, constantly wet soil can create a different problem. Strawberry roots need oxygen as well as moisture. Waterlogged soil reduces airflow and can weaken root health. This is why strawberries often perform best when the soil remains evenly moist rather than swinging between extremes. A simple observation habit can be helpful. Instead of following a strict calendar, occasionally check the soil before watering. Conditions often change depending on temperature, wind, container size, and rainfall. Over time, you'll begin noticing patterns. And those observations become far more valuable than any fixed watering schedule. Once roots are receiving the moisture they need, the next piece of the puzzle is energy from sunlight. Many strawberry plants can survive with less sunlight than people expect. Survival, however, is different from heavy fruit production. Flowers and berries require energy. That energy comes primarily from sunlight. A plant growing in partial shade may remain alive and even look healthy. Yet it may struggle to produce the large harvest many gardeners hope for. In cooler climates, strawberries often benefit from plenty of direct sunlight throughout the day. In very hot climates, conditions become more complicated. Intense afternoon heat can stress plants, especially when they are growing in containers. In those areas, some protection during the hottest part of the day may actually help maintain productivity. This is why gardening advice sometimes seems contradictory. What works perfectly in one location may not work exactly the same way somewhere else. Climate matters. Sunlight matters. And understanding your own growing conditions often matters more than following a universal rule. Now we arrive at the surprising discovery hinted at earlier. Many gardeners assume that if a little fertilizer is good, more fertilizer must be even better. Strawberries often teach a different lesson. Certain fertilizers contain large amounts of nitrogen. Nitrogen encourages leafy growth. Leaves become larger. Plants appear greener. Growth seems impressive. But there is a trade-off. When nitrogen levels become excessive, strawberries may focus heavily on producing foliage rather than flowers and fruit. This creates one of the most common gardening contradictions. The gardener works harder. The plant grows bigger. Yet berry production declines. The plant appears successful while quietly becoming less productive. This is why adding fertilizer repeatedly is not always the answer when harvests disappoint. Healthy strawberries need nutrients. But balance matters. In many cases, a plant producing moderate, steady growth is better positioned for fruit production than a plant creating an explosion of leaves. Sometimes the goal is not encouraging more growth. Sometimes the goal is encouraging the right kind of growth. As the season continues, strawberries often provide clues about their future performance. The challenge is that many gardeners notice those clues only after harvests begin shrinking. Small flower clusters can be one sign. Weak blooms may be another. Excessive runner production can also indicate that energy is being directed away from fruit development. These signals usually appear before major harvest reductions occur. This creates a valuable opportunity. When gardeners learn to recognize these early signs, they can make gentle adjustments before losing several weeks of production. The discovery is not dramatic. There is no sudden transformation overnight. Instead, it is the quiet realization that plants communicate constantly. They reveal their needs through growth patterns, flower production, and overall behavior. The more carefully we observe, the easier it becomes to respond appropriately. Speaking of runners, this brings us to one of the most debated questions in strawberry gardening. Should you remove them? The answer depends on your goal. Runners are the long stems that create new baby plants. Producing runners requires energy. That energy must come from somewhere. If your primary goal is maximizing fruit production from a container plant, removing many runners often helps direct more resources toward flowers and berries. However, if your goal is creating additional strawberry plants, allowing some runners to develop may make sense. Young plants and mature plants can also behave differently. Rather than following a strict rule, it helps to think about priorities. Is this plant being grown mainly for fruit this season, or for producing future plants? Observation once again becomes more useful than rigid instructions. Every